where there is no other source of income. Now, the reason given that African Americans act and behavior is not that say. Now, why is it that they act the way they do? Well, they have no work ethic. They live only for hedonistic moments and are of low moral character. Now, all of these things are constantly repeated on television, in books, in stories, in everything that you see. When you see anything about black people, they're always compared to white people, and these are the characteristics in any film or movie that you're going to see. You see hedonistic behavior, poor work ethic, trying to get over, and poor moral character. Therefore, they are not entitled to any educational, economic, or health benefits as we, the American people. So what you have is socialization is the process by which you reinforce an idea often enough that it becomes reality. Now, to tell you how much the idea is reinforced, even when you give a test to black people, and this test is designed to show faces and how you feel about the face. This is a bad face, a good face. If you saw this face, what would you do? Would you be afraid? And so forth. Even when black people see those same faces, they respond in the same way. So it's telling you that the socialization is so thorough that it even goes into our own psyche about, I'm walking down the street and I see 3 black men walking my way, I cross the street. Or I step in the doorway until they pass. Those are the kinds of things that the socialization has been so great that we ourselves buy into it. Now, this institutional white racist socialization process is completed when African American children are about 8 years of age in the 3rd grade. That is, that as an African American child, you're no longer protected and safe in your own community. You witness the greater world and realize the inequities between whites and black skin color. Just skin color, no. Now, to give you some information about that, Clark did his doll study many, many years ago, and it's been repeated over and over again with the same results. The socialization is so insipid that black children desire whiteness and even deny the visual reality of their own complexion. When you put their skin next to the doll and you say, which doll looks most like you, they say the white doll. Which one you don't like? Oh, they don't like that one. Why? Well, that one steals, that one. They have all the negative things. So you see, the socialization is already in the children at that age. Now, at this point, the impact of institutional white racist socialization begins to affect the overt behavior of black children. And they begin to strike back and strike out at the society. Now, their anger is classified as behavioral conduct disorder. Their physical agitation and frustration just in the situation in which they find themselves, their restlessness is classified as ADHD, etc. Inwardly, though, the black child is crying out, and we don't hear their pain. The results, they're classified, labeled, and very early, sometimes as early as 3 years of age, they're put on medication and ultimately in special education classes. And this, then, is the educational prison pipeline. The next time you see them, they're well on their way to going to prison. Now, that's kind of an overview of how I see things. And I want to kind of bring one more thought to you, which is that African Americans have a rage. Actually, there's a book written many, many years ago by two psychiatrists at Yale University. It was entitled Black Rage. The African American rage cannot be expressed directly to the white power structure. So now I'm getting to why the homicide. Whenever an individual or group of African Americans attempt to fight the system, and or kill the oppressor, the full weight of we the American people comes crashing down upon them with acts that are both legal and illegal. So lynching, that's an old one, still done in Texas a few years ago, dragged that man behind that truck. Destructions of whole towns, Florida and other places. The aerial bombing, the first time in this country had aerial bombing, and it was in the black community at Tulsa, Oklahoma. And the annihilation of the Black Panthers, a group that set out to do things to improve the black community, was too threatening. And so they had to be destroyed. And that's when you have illegal things going on. The FBI doing illegal things to destroy them. And, of course, ultimately they did. The violence towards blacks is firmly imprinted in the psyche of the African American. What we say is, you can be mad or crazy, but don't act no fool. The white man will kill you. So this is an imprint that says, I have no ventilation for my rage and my hostility other than, and that's the la phrase is French, la phrase assassine, the phrase that kills you. If that experience is your existentialistic reality, upon whom then do you turn your rage? Only where it is safe, another black man, who is also seen by the major community, we, the American people, as worthless, and therefore killing one of them is of no great loss. Now, if you look at how much is being said about the Palestinians being killed, almost 100. In the United States, across the United States, we have killed more than that in a month. Nobody's saying, oh, how horrible it is. To this point, they've not been able to kill any of the Israelis with their bombings, but just wait till they kill one and see, well, you had three young Palestinians killed, and look at the response of the world. Oh, the world's coming to an end. So I'm saying that our children are not valued. That's the point. Now, a lot of people, I want your readers to be very conscious of a lot of work, really some beautiful work, that has been done by Travis Smiley. He has a series of things he calls reports. And in episode 6, Education Under Arrest, that is how bad is the school-to-prison pipeline. Go online, find Travis Smiley reports, and get that and read that. It is one of the most precise things that you will read about this whole process. If you're now a solution, my solutions are, I went to school in Germany, so I believe in violence. So I can say that, all right. The first thing is to stop the socialization and don't buy into it. And the only way you can do that is we must politicize our children to understand the game and not get caught up in it. In other words, people pass laws. Right now, the laws are being passed that you have to have certain identification to vote. You can only vote on certain days and in certain places. Now, what we're doing is we're expending our energy going to court and all these different things to try to get those laws repealed, but the process is so long that the next election will take place and we still won't have them repealed. My attitude is comply with it. Comply with it. So if alpha and omegas and sigmas and deltas and AKAs, all of those young college students don't have to march and get beat up like before. But you need to go into the black communities and get everybody registered. And on election dates, you need to go and get Grandma or Aunt Susie or Aunt Mary, whoever she is, and put them in your car and drive them to the polls and make sure they register. Make sure that they have all the identification they're supposed to have. You see, if we wait right up to the date and the court says, well, the law is we'll have to hold it in abeyance. Well, they're holding it in abeyance until after the election. So don't wait for things like that. Get the thing done now. Right now, there's time enough to get everybody a picture that they want, everybody a registration. We know it's an act to keep people from voting, but don't get caught up in it. Do it, and then go to the white polls, and anyone coming to the poll and not having those credentials, you have a valid case to deny them the vote. You see? So that's the best way to use our young college students today. They marched years ago, got beat up and burned and everything you can imagine. But now, this is the new challenge for the Voting Rights Act. Go and get these people registered. Get their pictures taken. Get everything they need. And then make sure you do carry them to the polls. Now, the socialization process with small children, I want to give this example to you. I've been a therapist, I've told you all, since 1955, before a lot of you were born, or your parents were born even. I live here in Washington, D.C., and just outside of here, north on your way to Baltimore, there is a planned community called Columbia, Maryland. Columbia, Maryland is a beautiful, middle-class housing development where they were bringing people from all ethnic groups together and all going to be this wonderful, the American city. But the prices of the houses were all middle class. Well, a lot of blacks moved out there. Not a lot, but those that were middle class moved because they wanted that experience for their children. One of the couples, the husband was a teacher, the wife was a teacher. The wife was 4 generations teachers, the husband was 3 generations teachers. They brought their little 8-year-old black boy to me and said, Dr. Nichols, something is wrong. He has been talented and gifted, and he's now in the 3rd grade, and they have taken him out of talented and gifted. I said, why? Well, they say he's emotionally too immature to be in there. Well, I took the little boy into a little play session. We did some play therapy and what have you, and some finger painting drawings. There's nothing wrong with this child. And I gave him a few more little questions. I said, this child's brilliant. There's nothing wrong with this child to myself. And then I realized what was happening. That's because I've been black for a long time. The teacher in that classroom did not make enough money as a teacher to live in that community. And that little black boy was the smartest boy in the class. All right, you got all these little white boys there, all these little white girls, but the smartest one in the class is this little black boy. Now, if you are trying to do the institutional white racist socialization, saying that whites are superior, you can't have this anomaly constantly giving the right answers and being smarter than everyone else in the class. It just won't take, in spite of your effort. So, what she did was to say he was too immature, and she removes him at 3rd grade. Now, this is what I did with the little boy. I said, who's the smartest one in your class? He said, I am. I said, and when the teacher asked the question, I bet I know what you do. What? I said, you raise your hand. He said, how'd you know? I said, yeah. I said, I just wave and wave. And I said, I bet she don't call on you. How did you know? I said, okay. I said, but then what do you do when she doesn't call on you? He says, I wait and wave my hand, and then I give the answer. So now you see, that was his lack of impulse control. You see how labeling goes? Okay? Now, let's see what happens. Because she says he's too immature with outbursts like that and impulse control, she puts him out. And then, of course, all those little boys are being socialized like she wants to socialize them, to say that white is superior to black. And there's nothing there for them as an example to the cognitive dissonance for them. What did I do? I had to politicize an 8-year-old little black boy. I had to tell him, you're the smartest one in the class, and the teacher doesn't want all the other little white boys to know that you're smartest because she wants them to believe that white is smarter than black. Now, this is what I want you to do. I'm going to make sure that you get back in the class. I'll take care of that. But in the class, this is the behavior I want you to have. Now, I'm forcing him into a different behavior. I'm forcing him into a whirl of hostility and hatred, but I politicized him so he's strong enough to deal with it. I said, as soon as she asks a question, you write the answer on a piece of paper and turn it over. And she will ask everybody around the room, and finally somebody will give the right answer. Then you take the piece of paper and you hold it up so everybody sees it. You had the answer before, and there's nothing she can say about it because you didn't say anything, you weren't disrupted. You were just corroborating the fact that, yes, I'm the smartest one in this room. Now, that's a horrible burden to put on an 8-year-old child, but that was necessary in order for him to survive and to be politicized. Now, the other part of that, of course, was I had to go into my act. I went to the principal and I said, good morning, I'm Dr. Nichols. I'm the Chief for Child and Family Mental Health at the National Institute of Mental Health, and it's come to my attention that someone here has removed, and I gave the child's name, from the talented and gifted class, and I want to know the certification of that person to have made that decision. A licensed psychologist that is certified. I went just into my act, and you know I can do that. Okay? So I did it. And, of course, I said, you know, this situation must be cleared up, because if it isn't, then the parents are considering legal action. You should know that as third generation for the father and fourth generation for the mother of educators, it will be difficult to say that that there's anything wrong with the home and the educational opportunities afforded within the home. Oh, there's been some mistake. I said to myself, you're damn sure it's a mistake. Now, I had to get on her, too. I had to go to her and tell her. And I just told her, I said, you're very racist. I'm not. Then comes the tears. I'm not a racist. I said, yes, you are. And you're trying to socialize these little white children that they're smarter and better than he is. But the reality is he's smarter than all of them. And I don't want any more difficulty out of you in terms of how you do. And I said, I'm going to be watching the grade point average. You cannot give him a 3.9 and somebody else a 4.0. I'm going to watch to see what his grade point average is and see who's the person that's at the top of this class. I said, don't cry, just change your behavior. Now, that's a horrible thing to do, but that was what was necessary. That little boy's been very successful. He's now, he's an educator at university level. He went on not teaching school like his parents, but he's big-time university person at one of the top universities.
Beautiful.
Now, the second thing, Leroy, to bring about change.
Hold on one second, Doc. Okay. We have to identify who we are, where we're coming from. This is the community. This is Respect for Life. I'm Brother Leroy, the host, and our guest online is Dr. Edwin Nichols, and he is in Washington, D.C., by way of Detroit and other parts of the world. And you can always check back on what he says by going to Google and putting in Dr. Edwin Nichols, and information will pop up on him.
You're listening to WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem.
The other approach, a tactic for us to begin to reverse this socialization piece.
Okay, Leroy, the most detrimental thing that the black community experiences was the influx of drugs into our community. Okay? Now, we survived slavery as families. We survived Jim Crow. We survived killings, lynchings. We survived discrimination, housing, everything you can imagine we survived. And everything was thrown at us. The one thing that our community has not survived was the floodgate opened for drugs into the black community. Now, what I'm going to say is very radical, and it lacks Christian morality and other things, but drug dealers have to be killed. They have to be killed. And if you're not going to kill them, they're going to stop selling, get them in drug rehab. But the reason I'm saying that is because these people are killing our community. When you bring those drugs in, you have something that never happened in our community. you have young black men beating up their mother and beating up their grandmother for drug money. Now, people grew up, some of the people listening grew up in a community where if you did something wrong, you might be whipped by a neighbor, and by the time you got home, you got some more. But right now, people are terrified. Even mothers and fathers try to get a restraining order to keep these drug addict children away from them. Now, drug rehabilitation is a reality, but keeping the drugs out. Leroy, this is what I want you to understand, that I want to share with you. How do those drugs get in our community? Would you please tell me the name of the black airlines that flies drugs from Colombia in South America to Harlem? How do they get there? Who brings them there? And not the little drug dealer or the one on top of him that has the penthouse apartment and the car and all that kind of stuff. Where does that money go ultimately? Who's the person that gets it? And if you remember Noriega, he was going to say, and a whole part of his country was invaded, and a whole part of his city that had any information about who was that group of people was completely destroyed. They burned it to the ground. They put Noriega in a prison, and he's had so many drugs and what have you for his mental health drugs, you hear it, given to him by we, the American people. He wouldn't be able to tie his shoestrings if he ever got out. Okay? Now, that's a horrible thing to say, but that's the only way. Now, let me give you an example of where that worked. Right now, in South Africa, in the black community, drugs is destroying it. That's why they can't get their act together to pull their country together with all the wealth that's there. The blacks are still at the bottom. Whites are still at the top. Okay? Now, drugs is there, and it creates all the violence and the rape and all the other things that we have in our community, they now have in those black townships. What did the Indian community do? You have Indians that are South Africans. The first drug dealers to bring drugs in, all the men in the community came out. The men of that community came out into the street, thousands of them, took those drug dealers, put a tire filled with gasoline around their neck, lit it, and burned them to death. Now the world said, oh, that's barbaric, that's horrible, that's... How many drug dealers do you think go into the Indian community in South Africa? Okay? And it was like 1,000 men in the street. It wasn't one church or one person. It was everybody in that community saying, it's got to go, we can't have it here. We're not going to bring it in here. They don't have it. It's not an issue for them. Now, you see, this is going to be very difficult to do because you will be affecting the wealth of whites who control the drug money, the ones that are very top. See, I go back to what black airline brings drugs from South America to be distributed to blacks in our community. And my question is, with all of the surveillance that's available, that we have here in the United States, even when I get my telephone bill, it tells me what number I called, how long I talked on that number, and every single number that I've called on my cell phone and what have you. It's all there. Now, you can't tell me that nobody knows where this money ultimately goes. Now, I'm not talking about the guy who has a lovely apartment in Harlem. I'm not talking about him with a beautiful car and lots of girls. I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about to whom does he give the money? That's what I want to know. To whom does he give the money? That's the issue. And that's the group that would fight anything that we would do to try to get rid of drugs in our black community. Drugs serve a purpose in the black community. They destroy all the fabrics of civilization. Addicts beat grandma for drug money. The black community has been able to survive everything thrown at it by the institutional white racist system. However, drugs unleashed in our community has destroyed us. And we have to figure out how to get rid of it. The last point I'm going to make so we can have a discussion with anyone who wants to ask questions. This is positive, and I think a lot of our energy has been spent on guys that are in prison. And I understand, and we need to help them. But I had a wonderful experience, Leroy, about 3 weeks ago. I was invited by Dr. Roy Jones, who is a full professor in the Department of Education at Clemson University in South Carolina. Now, I know there's some cognitive dissonance because you all are trying to figure out Clemson black school. No, it ain't no black school. He's the black there, okay? He has a program entitled Call Me Mr. Now, some people go back to the film where that was a very prominent line, Call Me Mr. But this reality goes back further, particularly in South Carolina history. People were forbidden to address blacks as Mr. So it was boy or Charlie or something, but never Mr. You see? So this is Call Me Mr. Now, what is that program about? It's in its 14th year. He has black male elementary school teachers. That's what this group is made up of. He has all these black male elementary school teachers. These are young black men preparing to teach elementary school in the black community. Now, what that does is it gives a positive example of black boys with a black teacher. They get positive reinforcement when they are boisterous and loud, they can handle it. See what I'm saying? Now, whom do we have educating our children today, and why do we have so many suspensions and all these other things? We primarily have white middle-class women, and they're the people who are not going to take any crap from anybody black because they have to take crap from their white husbands because they are not male, but they're female. And so the attitude is, I'm not taking it from them. They suspend them. They put them into all kinds of situations. And that begins that track of education to prison pipeline. Be sure to get Tavis Smiley's report on that. It's a brilliant report, and your listeners should read it. So these are the three things. Stop the socialization, politicize your children to understand what racism is about, and that we, the American people, doesn't include them, and they don't like them. Okay? Get the drugs out of our community, and then do the education of our own children. Don't leave the education of our children up to somebody who has no interest in them, who doesn't care for them, and wants to maintain the status quo. All right, Leroy, that's my best shot for today.
Taking your best shot. Ladies and gentlemen, you have the opportunity to call in to raise questions, etc., with Dr. Edwin Nichols. That's Nichols. Telephone number 212-650-6903. 212-650-6903. And you'll be on the air with Dr. Edwin Nichols. There's a quote statement that you made. You said the black child is crying out and we don't hear their pain. I want to go to that after we take some calls. God bless you on the air. Thank you for your call.
Oh, yes. Good morning. I'm enjoying Dr. Nichols so much, and it's almost frightening to hear what's going on in our community. But, you know, I have heard them say, America, if they would take drugs out of America, selling the drugs, this economy would collapse. Would you please give me some information on that and just let me listen to hear what you say about that report, and thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Drugs make the next generation of millionaires in this country. If you go back to Prohibition, alcohol was illegal, but the people who smuggled it and made money off of it became the wealthy people of the 30s and the 40s. Just look to see who made their wealth off of smuggling. Okay? And so now, what alcohol was then, drugs is now. It's not the little people. It's not even the guys who drive the beautiful cars and all that. It's not them either. It's where the money goes in other ways. See, it is such a reality now that smoking pot now is going to be almost legal in a little bit. And look at the revenue that's being made from that. Look at Colorado, how much money they've made. They're doing the same thing in either Washington or Oregon. So there's a lot of money to be made for drugs, but it doesn't compare anything to. In other words, all the drugs that you could sell won't bring you as much revenue as a GM, General Motors, or a Ford company brings you in terms of tax revenue.
Okay, hold on. God bless you. Thank you for your call. You're on the air.
Yes, great and wonderful day.
Thank you.
Brother Leo, I want to concise this question. Dr. Nichols, present day, my brother.
Good day. How are you?
Yes, I'm feeling better. You uncovered something about the big lie of the falsification of black inferiority in the schools and so forth. Now, I would like to ask you, is it possible that as these youths are really seeing the real truth behind this here, they feeling a certain sense of resentment for the establishment, the religions, and the education, and this could be possibly behind some of these here school shootings, campus shootings, and military-based shootings? Is it possible? Because they see how they also have been, slighted, in the society, and they feel that their own people are blamed of this here, and they are lashing back psychologically. Is it possible?
Wait a minute. On your question,
yes, brother.
We're talking about black children. You talk about campus shootings. Campus shootings, to my knowledge and my awareness, has been in Caucasian communities.
That's what I'm speaking on. And this is ironically that the psychological effect of the falsification of black inferiority that has been, pushed down people's throat. They seeing that it's been a big lie, and they seeing that.
Okay.
So they seeing so much of prosperity that can possibly come through black youths if they was not so suppressed, and now they're suppressed in their own communities. They can't really express themselves either. And could this possibly be behind the backlash of the resentment? Could it possibly be, Brother Nichols?
Right.
I feel like I'm speaking to God on this subject.
Right.
Thank you, Brother Leroy.
But when we look at the whites who are doing what they're doing, as a psychologist, many of them are extremely emotionally disturbed. Now, in the black community, say you can be crazy, but don't act no fool. So, like this man went and killed his sister-in-law, brother-in-law, and 4 of his nieces and nephews. He was crazy, and that's what he's going to plead. That's why he collapsed in the court and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes people like that have some mental illness, but it's not to the degree that would warrant those kinds of behaviors and sort of a mask for their behavior. So what I think what is going on in the white community is not so much a resentment it's a resentment. What they're seeing is cognitive dissonance. The society says one thing, but it does something else. And I think a lot of the dissatisfaction comes from that. And the only time that's been all pulled together and as a force was during the Vietnam War, when you had all these people saying, get out. There's no need for us to be there. Don't talk about the domino theory. We don't believe it. Just stop bombing those people and get out of there. That's one of the few times that you've had en masse the dissent of people saying we don't want it and stop it. And of course, systems don't like that, so they do more socialization and propaganda so that people aren't that upset about wars and things like that. For an example, we all know now, and many people knew then, that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And but you you got the socialization, which is, our soldiers, we have to, what did they say? I thank you for your service, you see them, all this kind of stuff. Well, that's to socialize you to accept the fact that we got into something and we killed off a lot of young people, and but it was for the greater good of we, the American people. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and it raises the cognitive dissonance that you're talking about as relates to the white community. Is it says the society, people who run this thing, say one thing, in actuality the opposite is going on. When you look at Occupy Wall Street, would you compare that as a baby of the Vietnam? When I say a baby of,
yes, it was exactly that. But do you see how they dispensed with that very quickly? It didn't give enough time to catch on.
Right.
See, they quelled it. It's quelched right away, so that it couldn't grow and fester.
Telephone number 212-650-6903. You'll be on the air with Dr. Edwin Nichols. You mentioned earlier at the very beginning the black child, the black boy. The black child is crying out and inwardly crying out, and we don't hear their pain. Just very quickly, what is it? How do we search to know that they're crying out, or what are the symptoms, the indicators? Well, before it gets to overtly violent.
Well, that's a part of it, but you see, the dissatisfaction is they. First of all, there are several ways of. When I talk about epistemology, I talk about the different ways of knowing. Our school systems is based on a European way of knowing, parts of the whole, linear, sequential, count, and measure. And the African way of knowing is holistic thinking and the big picture. It's also symbolic imagery. And so when someone says to you, you don't hear my pain, don't go into the grammar about pain cannot be heard. You see? Go to the symbolism of someone not being able to hear the pain of another person. That is, their suffering. So I was doing marriage counseling, and this woman was an English teacher with a master's degree, and she had condescended to marry a bus driver. And she never let him live that down, and they were in psychotherapy, and she was just berating him every time they would come into psychotherapy. She'd berate him. And I, at that time, used to record the sessions, and he said, you don't hear my pain. And she immediately jumped on the grammar and all this sort of thing. And I said, wait a minute. And I played it back, and then she finally heard his pain, and she started crying because of the way she'd been treating her husband. So we have a lot of symbolism in the black community that express ideas. They may not be in the grammar that is Western proper, but they are symbolism.
Got it.
Black children are holistic thinkers. The way I get whites to understand how important it is to be a holistic thinker is I ask, how many of you took geometry? They raise their hand. How many of you passed geometry? They raise their hand. I said, now tell me what geometry is. In other words, give me the big picture. What does geometry do? They can't tell you. Because they were always doing these series of parts that became the whole. They never got to the whole. They do the equation, but to what end? What's the purpose of it all? Well, see, black children want to know, what you talking about? Where are you going? What does that mean? Well, if you don't explain that to the beginning, they become frustrated. See, we have to have, that's why I'm so, Leroy, I was so excited to see this group of, there were more than 200 black men in this auditorium, young black men, undergraduates, and then one or two graduated from the program that come back to help, do the mechanics of the meetings and so forth. And I was looking at this audience of more than 200 black men. The previous time that I had seen that many black men in one collective place was at a maximum security prison in Washington State. I looked at all those young black men, and they're in there until they die. One of them, about 28, which would be about the same age as some of these guys that are now teaching elementary school, black elementary school male teachers. And he said, Dr. Nichols, I'm working on getting my reprieve from the governor. I'll get my pardon from the governor. I said, well, that's wonderful. He said, yeah, I can apply for it when I'm 65 years old. My heart sunk. So I think that while we really have to focus on our youth, and we have to get in there and work with them. And if you can't be a teacher, elementary school teacher, you can certainly get that little group of boys in the afternoon right after school, because some of them go into after-school programs. Pull them all together, give them some games and some expressions and what have you, and then sit down and start doing some teaching and modeling of what is the role of a black man. And these are not groups to be run by women. Now, I'm not talking anything against women not being able to. I'm saying that little black boys need black images of black men. I hope I'm not sounding sexist or something like that. I'm saying that the imprint that one black child gets from a black man is when it's very positive, it's very sustaining. It tells them that we are of worth and we are of value.
Dr. Nichols, hold on. We're going to take this last call, and God bless you on the air. Thank you for your call.
Yes, a blessed morning to you, Brother Leroy and Dr. Nichols.
Yes, sir. We're at the end. We need your question.
The question is concerning all of the veterans that have come home from all wars having a drug addiction, having children from that drug addiction. Now you have a new drug, not marijuana, but alcoholism, that's combined with children who have a drug dependency from birth. Not crack cocaine. We're talking 30 years. I wanted to know what Dr. Nichols thought about the presentation of fighting drugs on 3 levels, alcoholism. Not crack cocaine, but the other kind of meth, and then you add in the alcoholism and the marijuana. Those 4, and now how do we fight on those 4 fronts to try and get our children back to a state of normalcy?
Dr. Nichols, you got that?
Yes, I
Okay.
understand. Listen,
right.
Things that's why those things are given so freely, because they destroy. They destroy. When you smoke all those things, that your brain cells are gone. You lose them, and we now know that the spermatozoa that we used to think was impermeable to everything, it now has some deficits from the drugs that people take. And we have historically, we've had children which we call fetal alcohol syndrome. I saw a lot of that in Europe.
What is that called? What is that called?
Fetal alcohol.
Oh, okay. Okay, got it.
And their weight, their height is stunted. They're malformed sometimes with jaw and teeth and things like that. Yeah, it's fetal alcohol syndrome. That's been around for a long time. So we have a body of history. Now, when you combine that with the drug use and so forth, then you see that we're killing our children before we get them.
Dr. Nichols, we want to thank you very, 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 very for this kindergarten that we had this morning. And I'm saying this is, the calls are off the hook here, but we can't take any more calls. The point is that this at least gets us to thinking on an active as to what we can and should do. With a parent and a guardian out there, real quick, the politicization of our young children and even our teenagers who don't, everybody needs an understanding. How would you approach politicizing the elementary school child?
I sit them in front of television and I teach them how to take tally marks, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a slash for 5. Mm-hmm. How to do that. And we make some columns. So one column is, every time you see a black person, won't be very many times, are they positive or negative in their behavior? Are they silly? Are they intelligent? How are they? So they can, it's an either-or kind of marking. Then I ask them to mark how many times you see something that's violent. Somebody hits somebody blows somebody up in cartoons, somebody does this, somebody does that. And then I ask them to see, when you do see black characters, are they good or are they bad? Are they the drug dealer? Are they the pimp? Who are they? And just by tallying, in a very short time, these kids say, when the program starts, see, he's going to be the bad guy. He's going to be the drug dealer. And they're right. So then I tell them, I said, now, is that true? I said, look around you, all the people that you know. Anybody doing that? Well, somebody down there does, somebody does that. I said, but what about your parent? Well, no, I said, well, why do you think they're telling you that? How do they want you to act? What do they want? What do they want you to think your possibilities are?
Dr. Nichols, want to thank you very much.
Okay.
And whenever I do that, I'm being run out of the station legitimately. My brother, thank you very much. May God continue to bless you and your growing family.
All right.
All right. Peace. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your support of WHCR. Remember the fundraiser. Go to the fundraiser and let them know, hey, I'm getting my ticket because of Respect for Life, etc. May God continue to bless all of you. And Nellie Bailey tonight, and she's on at 6, and Brother Bill is on Thursday morning. He's always has a great guest. And Black Beat New York, Flo Wiley, Thursday night. God bless you.
You're listening to WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem.
Hi, this is Flo Wiley inviting you to listen to Black Beat New York every Thursday night at 6. Black Beat New York is all about what's happening on the arts and culture scene in New York City, with a special emphasis on what's going on in the sweet village of Harlem. Celebrity interviews, ticket giveaways, Black Beat weekly events calendar, and I'll play for you some of the finest music you'll hear on the radio anywhere. Every Thursday at 6, Black Beat New York, The Flo Wiley Show.
Peace and love, this is your sister Daia, inviting you to tune into First Light and the Gardens of Tranquility and Contemplation every Saturday morning from 6 a.m. until 11 a.m. for great jazz and a soothing meditation, artist interviews, and news that you can use right here at WHCR 90.3 FM, Harlem Community Radio, the voice of Harlem. That's every Saturday morning from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem.
WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
Variedades Latinas es música, alegría, entretenimiento,
ahora se inicia
comentarios y mucho más.
Ahora se inicia tu programa favorito, Variedades Latinas. Variedades Latinas. Con Arismendi Méndez y Martín de la Cruz.
Variedades Latinas, lo mejor de Nueva York. Música, farándula y mucho más. Un manantial de información. Y aquí llegó el fiel de la radio. Puntual y al día, Arismendi García. Ahora te invita a disfrutar. ¡Hey!
Buenos días, ¿qué tal mi gente? Placer inmenso estar de regreso con ustedes. Hoy es lunes, comienzo de semana, 14 del mes de julio, año 2014. Buenos días, bienvenido a este su espacio, Variedades Latinas, el impacto musical de Nueva York a través de WHCR 90.3 FM, la voz tropical de Harlem. Espero que desde ya la estén pasando súper bien, súper chévere. Les tendemos la invitación hasta las 2 de la tarde como de costumbre. Mi nombre es Arismendi Méndez, de cariño el fiel. Más adelante estaremos en compañía de Martín de la Cruz. Raquelín no llega hoy, pero estará a través de la línea telefónica con su acostumbrada sección de farándula en Algo Más que Farándula. Así que quédese ahí pegadito a su radio. Vamos de inmediato a dar inicio a nuestra programación en la parte musical. Recuerde, la línea telefónica para establecer contacto con nosotros es el 212-650-6903. 650-6903. Así iniciamos oficialmente este tu espacio Variedades Latinas hasta las 2 de la tarde. Quédate ahí pegadito a tu radio.
Mira sin querer cómo cambia la vida. Es más de conocer y menos poesía. Y a veces cosas